Next is item 9B, consideration of approval of a consulting agreement with COAlign Group LLC for development of the general obligation bond and sales tax election strategies for $88,500 for the total scope of services.
Mr. Mayor, that's me.
Yes, sir.
I can go down there if you want, or I can stay up here.
Stay right here,
All right,
sir.
perfect. Appreciate that. This discussion has been on an item on minds of council for several years. I remember when I first came on in 2022, reading previous budget books from the previous city manager, always noting that while the finances seemed to be in good shape, there was something to consider down the line about other alternative funding opportunities to look at. If you may remember, in January of 2023, we had a report from Wildan looking at feasibilities about revenue and forecasting economic challenges. And one of the items it said is, while sales tax was important, you need to first consider reauthorizing the existing CIP and 1 cent sales tax. Additionally, it said you should be looking at development impact fees, which we have a study ongoing that you'll start to see that information in the next few weeks coming to your eyes as well as the public body to discuss that. And then the other aspect was in Section 6 of the Wildan report, it talks about general obligation debt should be considered to fund both limited, non-street and non-utility projects as well as street projects. Having said that, we had a much robust discussion last November at the City Council strategic meeting over at Kicking Bird, and there was a discussion there. If you want to go to the next slide there for us. At the November 2023 strategic meeting, there was a item identified on the strategic goal of 2024 to appoint a citizens committee to recommend appropriate projects and funding levels to fund a possible, or funding levels for a possible GO bond election. If you go to the next slide, I appreciate the help here. One of the aspects of that is in consideration of timing and which financing methods we want to consider and dates and what that goes into that. As we looked around the table as far as staff who has experience doing that type of work, while we had people that have done bits and pieces of it, but nobody had an overall experience and background leading those discussions and efforts. We decided to look outward to see if there are other expertise in the community, I mean the metro area. It was decided that we should look at hiring a consultant to help us investigate these opportunities. So as we did that, we came across Ms. Kathy O'Connor, who leads the COAlign group. And so the goal of this contract or this proposal that's before you today is to assist staff and council to investigate the viability, timing, and structure, and potentially leading a citizens committee to determine the best option for the city on that effort. Ms. Kathy she's sitting there in the back. I'll invite her up here at the end if you have any questions for her. She brings great experience working with several metro communities. You can correct me if I get this wrong, Kathy, as well as her background working as assistant city manager at Oklahoma City in their finance departments, as well as other areas looking at these type of funding questions. So she brings a robust experience on that effort. So as we looked at developing a scope, I'll go through here the three different phases that we're proposing under this scope of work. Phase 1 would be to conduct a series of interviews with key stakeholders. Some of the groups we're talking about are city council members, probably representatives from our Edmond Public Schools, Chamber of Commerce, EEDA, board realtors, other civic groups, to have her team go out and make those interviews to probe, to ask them questions about their thoughts about the various different funding opportunities, whether it be sales tax and or GO. Talk about timing with them, concerns, opportunities, take that feedback internally, assess that, if there's a general theme or a general thought process, as well as then reporting back to council on those interviews and key themes, and also potentially looking at over the next year or beyond a year what possible dates could present an opportunity for the city to consider the sales tax reauthorization and or a GO possible election. And that, I that's the first step. I think that's anticipated to be about 5 to 6 weeks on that effort to make that report back to City Council and to staff. And then if the city staff and council decide to move forward to the next phase, if you want to turn the slide there, phase 2 would be, as we've talked about, I think Councilmember Moore had made the suggestion at their retreat back in November is to form a citizens committee to start exploring possible bond projects and structuring and those things of that nature. Ms. O'Connor and her team would have the opportunity to lead that discussion because of her experience and background, how to structure those type of bond discussions, what possible projects. I think we had earlier this evening discussion from Andy Conyers, Assistant City Manager, about the CIP and what projects there are on that, as well as I'll call it Mind the Gap, I think he called that, which is what are the anticipated next 10 years of worth of projects, what are funding opportunities, what are the funding gaps, what could be identified with that Citizens Committee to identify projects that could be funded either for a GO or a sales tax, and then work with that group to identify those key projects and possible mill levy and timing of those elections. So you see there at the bottom, the deliverables will be finding a recommendation for size, structure, and term of a GO bond authorization, assess how the GO bond will relate to a sales tax level for capital improvements. And I think that's the key discussion is we want her to lead that discussion and effort to, is it one or the other, or is it one end? And then the discussion is, what's the appropriate timing? And as you do anything, is if you set, let's say, a target date, what needs to occur backwards to occur this? It's not just, here's the date, and we all show up on the date. Usually there's a lot of work to develop a plan of action for those type of efforts. And then returning back to council to discuss the final recommendation of projects from the GO Citizens Committee. So that phase 2 is a big step because we're going to convene a GO Citizens Committee discussion about the size and scope, and Ms. O'Connor and her team would lead that effort because of their background to help that Citizens Committee kind of navigate what's the appropriate sizing, what type of projects, taking her experience about what tend to have higher levels of success for considerations for projects. And then if the council decides to move on to phase 3, is to work with the city and possibly public relations firm to develop a presentation for the GO Bond Citizens Committee, develop materials for that meeting, those meetings, continue to work with the Citizens Committee to help with communication and advocacy. If council decides to do a GO bond election, obviously the big one is present a GO bond election proposal to the city council for approval to set the election date. So no matter what, it's going to come back for discussion for council to decide if and when on either of these type of proposals, whether it be sales tax and or a GO. And then if council decides to move forward, is continue to lead that effort to implement a sales tax and or GO bond election plan. So that's the effort of this initiative. Again, this has been, I'll call it several years in the workings, even back to previous city managers said this is something in the near future that the city needs to approach. I think the Will Down study highlighted the need to dig deeper into this. I appreciate the direction of the 2024 council strategic plan is, there's a lot of talk, but now we need to get down to really investigate the different issues and what merits there are or challenges that go with this. So if you want to stand up, Kathy O'Connor, if you want to come forward, I'll ask her to introduce herself and maybe add anything you want to add on to what I discussed.
Good evening, I'm Kathy O'Connor, and it's very nice to be here with you this evening. Just a little bit about me and my background. I was with the City of Oklahoma City for almost 30 years. The last 15 or so of that was involved in being the city's finance director and an assistant city manager responsible for the finance department, IT, economic development, several other different kinds of things. In 2011, I left the city to be the president and CEO of the Alliance for Economic Development, which led all of the city's economic development and redevelopment efforts. Did that for 11 years, and then about 2 years ago, started my own consulting firm. My consulting work has really grown into working with cities in Oklahoma on a variety of financial issues, looking at different financial problems that they have, whether that's related to economic development, tax increment financing. I've done some financial analysis, just operating budget kind of work for some cities, how to handle different kinds of operations in different ways. So lots of different kinds of work that I've started to do all around the state, and look forward to working with the City of Edmond on this important issue. I think it's a really important step that takes a lot of careful thought and planning. A little bit of background, in the late 80s, I was involved at the city's initiatives to begin to issue general obligation bonds again, and successfully led the structuring and implementation of a bond issue in 1989 that really kind of led to this practice in Oklahoma City of having regular general obligation bond issues to fund critical infrastructure for the community that they see as a big part of their total economic development package, really, that it's just one of the legs on the stool that the city depends on for reliable, sustainable funding options that are not as susceptible to some of the volatility that some funding sources are for cities. So I really appreciate the approach that you all have asked me to look at, that is a series of steps along the way where you all get to decide if you want to go further, and really trying to get some input and transparency from the community in this important issue.
Well, I'm glad that you're standing in front of us this evening, because it is a big step for us in this community. We've never been there before. And so any project you do, it doesn't matter, it could be a do-it-yourself or big structure. You have to get the information to make the right decisions. And this, I feel, going through this process is going to bring the information to the council and to the citizens. Is this something, what should we do?
Yes.
And then, instead of just having it a line on our budget saying that we need to talk about it, we're going to actually do more, talk about it, and analyze it. So I greatly appreciate that.
Stench.
Council, anything?
I appreciate it. I think I haven't been shy about it. People move to Edmond because of the quality of life. The budget meetings that were heard earlier today highlighted clearly some of the opportunities that we have, but then also some of the challenges, unknown and known, whether it be something as needed as far as Pelican Bay and modernization, or just ensuring our first responders, police and fire, have the proper equipment from face masks and other things. And I think giving our citizens an opportunity to be able to evaluate and intelligently look at what can we do if we have a dedicated process to look at them giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to projects, I think is smart, and it's utilized by every city of above 50,000. And so it's a good start to a conversation that I'm looking forward to participating in.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.